Well, yeah, but like it keeps saying like the holy city was destroyed.
Oh, you want to hear something funny while you're looking that up?
Yeah.
So my whole like idea of what Rogue One was supposed to be came from complete misinformation. I was thinking of Return of the Jedi when Admiral Akbar says that many Bothans died to get the plans for the Death Star, except it was Death Star 2, not Death Star 1. And so I had believed that they were all going to die because I thought it was them. I thought it was a different mission, basically. And they're not even Bothans. Turns out Bothans are a completely different race.
Yeah, they're a specific kind of creature, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you watch Rogue One, you knew they were all going to die. Because of for the wrong reason.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's like, and I remember specifically in that after the movie ended, my father was with me and he was like, "They all die? That sucks." And I was like, "You really have no idea about the stuff you got me into as a kid." Like, he only was very much on the surface. Like,
I was like, "Fuck yeah, they killed everybody." It's like that. Pull my heartstrings. Do it.
So I told you I watched Samurai X a couple weeks ago, and so D got 20 minutes through it, fell asleep. That was it. You know. It's.
She's canceled.
I know you were
Tell
tired.
her she's canceled.
Fuck. Why are you here while we're recording? Go, I don't know.
Go watch Samurai X.
I don't know what to tell you. We're recording. It's kind of. I'm gonna take some parts out, put it in. It's gonna be like a conversation that leads into the podcast. It's gonna be perfect. Anyway, so we're watching Rogue One the other night. She's asking questions. She seems committed. Falls asleep 20 minutes in. Wakes up at the very. Like, at the end of it, like, as credits are rolling, and she's like, "What happened?" I'm like, everybody died, but they got the plans for the Death Star to the rebellion. She's like, "Just shows that evil can't win." And then she falls back asleep. So she, while asleep through this whole movie, she paid more attention to Rogue One than she did to Samurai X. It was incredible.
That's pretty funny, man. I was fortunate enough to see this movie in theaters with Vanessa, and she really actually enjoyed it a lot. But there's a cameo by a British like rapper, or like, you know, like he has like a duet kind of thing, and she's like, "Oh my god, that's Rizzle Kicks," and I'm like, "Who?" And
I'm sorry, his name's Rizzle Kicks?
His group is Rizzle Kicks, him and his okay. And I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" But sure enough, it really was, and like they just had this random cameo, and I feel like nobody else outside of the UK would have known who this guy was, but she did.
Hey,
they make pretty good music. So.
I've always said she's the most cultured out of all of us. I wasn't sure if it was going to be, who does the song Written in the Stars? Something Tempe?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Timmy Tempe?
Nah.
Tempe? Tiny Tempe?
Tony Montana.
Tony Montana. You ride with the stars, you ride with the best. It is like T-I-N-I-E.
Tiny Tim.
Tempe. Tempa. I'm sorry. It's not Tempe. That's the vegan.
That's fucked up, dude. Come on. You can't eat the guy. Featuring
Eric Turner. Hey, with his consent, I can. All right, let's get into it. I just want to let you know that JazzCam89 in December, new listener, came in because of the Lovecraft Country episodes we did, and I want to let all of our fans know how great JazzCam is. JazzCam said, "Absolutely love it." This is a review for the podcast, by the way. "I found this podcast when I started watching Lovecraft Country, and I absolutely love it. I went back and listened to all the episodes I missed that were unrelated to Lovecraft, and I really enjoyed their style. As a black woman, I appreciate that they highlight social and political themes, and also that they're super honest when they didn't know about something, but went and did research about it. I've learned a lot from this show. I especially love the episodes focused on Indigenous people. I love the banter, the personal stories, basically everything about this show. I highly recommend it." So, we're doing something right.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for the review.
And with that, Jazz, this one's for you. Let's bring in the theme music. Welcome back to the Politipop Podcast, the podcast where we take your favorite pop culture media and discuss the social and political themes within. I am your co-host, Mike Booch, a.k.a. the pseudo-intellectual soy boy, a.k.a. A-Stab, all stormtroopers are bastards, a.k.a. Darth Vegan, a.k.a. That's No Poon. And in my second seat here, as always, is my buddy Ty.
I'm digging those AKAs. Those are pretty good.
Thank you. Oh, a.k.a. TIE fighter.
Hey!
And today we, yeah, you know how I do. And today we are reviewing Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Before we get into any of this, Ty, how did you feel going into the film the first time you saw it 4 years ago? I think this was just after Trump became president.
So I will
in
be
2016,
very honest. I had no interest in this story. I thought it was pointless, a cash grab. I was like, why do I need to know how they got the Death Star plans? We know what happens. None of these characters are really going to ultimately matter. I was more amped up about the new trilogy, featuring Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and all that. The trailer came out and it looked really good. I was like, wow, the trailer's pretty cool. I'll give it a shot. So I went and saw it in theaters, and it blew my fucking mind. I thought it was awesome. Little did I know it would be the best Star Wars film of the new generation, by far.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And I thought they touched on some pretty interesting themes in this film that we're going to get into more, but a little bit more of the grittiness of the Rebel Alliance and how it wasn't so black and white with the good guys and the bad guys.
All right. Well, how did I feel about going into it? Thanks for asking, Ty. I originally, I'm a person of very basic tastes. Okay, if I watch an anime, I watch it for the gore and for the fighting and all that stuff. And if I'm watching Star Wars, because I am a martial artsophile, have been ever since I was a kid, it's probably the only consistent thing about who I am as a person. I've always wanted to see lightsabers in every Star Wars movie. If it doesn't have a lightsaber in it, I really don't want anything to do with it. I never wanted anything to do with the people who use blasters instead of lightsabers. It just wasn't my thing. And granted, there is a lightsaber at the end of this movie.
I was going to say, there is a lightsaber.
There is a lightsaber.
It's the best lightsaber.
I remember seeing it in theaters with my father at the time before I cut him off. And, because guess what? I'm going to see any Star Wars movie in theaters. Okay? I'm not going to be the person who's like, that made my childhood so bad, so I'm not going to give you any money. Obviously, theaters will never open back up again. We're going to be...
They're open right now.
Hellscape. But, oh yeah, you're right. But obviously... They are? What? I went to a movie theater in order to get some popcorn.
See?
And then go back to my home. But I don't know, man. I don't think I'm personally ever going to go back to the theater. How about that?
I mean, I don't know. I'm actually eligible to get the vaccine soon because I'm an essential worker, which is what they tell me, so that I fucking go to work every day, and people can get their groceries.
You are essential. You're expendable, but you're also essential. The hiring process.
Even though we're at the bottom of the essential list, when you look on the website, it's like, we just squeezed in there at the end. But yeah, so I don't know.
At the bottom of the website, it's a Post-it note that just says grocery store workers.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you guys too. Oh, yeah, thanks.
You put it on the website.
Thanks.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No,
about
but
I
I don't know. Maybe if the vaccine is, it does turn out it's quite effective, I would absolutely go back to the movie theater. I love the movies. I don't think there's any experience like it. It's the only way that I can fully tune out, unfortunately, in this day and age, and just focus completely on the film. There's always a distraction I find at home, whether it's your phone or your girlfriend or your cat or your dog. There's always something that gets you. But, when you're at the movie theater...
Why is my girlfriend hanging out at your house, man? Why is my cat and my dog...
At least it's not your wife, right?
Not yet.
So yeah, I find movie theaters are just a unique experience. And it's, I went to film school because I love movies so much. So I would absolutely go back to movie theaters, but not for a very, very long time.
Now, very similar to Jin, I didn't necessarily have a dog in this fight. And by that, I just mean politics in general. I am one of those people who kind of started centrist, and then I went liberal, because I didn't like the mean words people said. And I believe in civil rights, but, I believe the Democrats are the good guys all the time.
Yeah.
And then, and that's how this podcast started, honestly. That's how it started, because Trump was elected, and I was like, all right, I have stuff to say. Let me do it in regards to movies, because that's my favorite stuff, or shows, or whatever. And then his entire presidency plus the pandemic, really, and seeing the hypocrisy of all sides, not just one mean orange man, but all sides, and the system that enabled him.
Yep.
That, and continues to, that is really what radicalized me.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of similar to Jin in that way. So the first time I went into this movie, I didn't care about it. I didn't care about the politics of it or anything. I didn't care about the story. I was just like, all right, let's see if it's a good movie. And even this time, it was still a little confusing because, like, I understand the story beats, but just the technical stuff of like, oh my God, we can't get this thing to there until you put that thing there. And they're like, well, I can't get to that thing to put that there unless you flip this switch. And it's like, well, I can't flip that switch unless you flip this coin and it lands on heads.
What?
So there was a lot of steps to, in the technical stuff to actually get the plans beamed to Radiss's ship.
I mean, that was very clearly done to give all these characters a purpose at the end, because otherwise it would have just been Jin. That's all, she would have done it all, but each of them had a role to play at the end.
I think you mean it would have been K2SO. You said it. No.
I mean, he was the real MVP. But yeah, they all had, they all gave their life for a part of getting the plans out there. I think that's what's kind of poetic about each of their deaths.
Do we even need to do a spoiler warning for this episode?
Oh, yeah.
We started off before the episode even began talking about how...
Sorry, guys. We didn't give you a spoiler warning. The Death Star just attacked.
But yeah, so however, this time going into it with knowing everything that I know, it was much clearer to me to see the social commentary that they put in there. Before this, there was controversy. Thank you. So there was some controversy around this. You could find it in the show notes. Fox News had this coverage where people were boycotting the film because one of the writers, I think, had some anti-Trump stuff, and they said the empire represents white supremacy, and I don't like Trump, and blah 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 blah. And so all these people were like, "That's it. We're not gonna go to see this Star Wars movie. They messed it up when they had a black stormtrooper in the last one, and now we're not. That's it."
He was a First Order trooper, first of all. So
they don't call them stormtroopers in the new trilogy.
I think they're First Order troopers now.
Well, they didn't call them Imperial troopers in the original trilogy. That's the only reason I'm wondering.
True. Who knows?
They
all spawn from clones anyway, right? Which really doesn't make
for as
any
deep
sense.
as we are, we're casuals compared to some people. Someone's gonna be like, "Excuse me, Thrawn's left pinky is actually 5 inches shorter." All right. But yeah, so there are people who are looking to boycott and everything until one of the Disney executives came out and said it's not political at all. This isn't a political film in the slightest. Which I just want to talk about the Star Wars franchise for a second real quick, because if you are a fan of the Star Wars franchise, you are a fan of violent protest and rebellion. And that is the long and the short of it.
Yeah.
The original trilogy, they took a lot from World War II stuff and put that into the dogfights in space, and they put that into, the Empire. You notice they're very Aryan, except in Mandalorian for some reason. They put a lot of more people of color in the Empire. I guess now that they've been disbanded, they're a little more desperate. But the Empire and the Emperor himself, they are notably racist. All of the people who work for them are humans, except for like Thrawn and the bounty hunters they use. And most of those people are white, apparently, except for Bodhi Rock.
Yeah.
But the Empire has always been an allegory for the Nazis, and now we see, and yes, the Nazis represent white supremacy. And in this movie, we're going to go into in this podcast, we're going to go into the themes of this movie and really just discuss exactly how they do represent not just, I don't want to say just white supremacy, but imperialism. And United States are some of the biggest imperialists in the entire world, so.
But can we just go back to that statement about politics? The prequel trilogy literally had like 50% political scenes.
Yeah, all it was politics. But the thing is, they probably didn't relate it to our politics. Yeah. They just related. However, you kind of can. But you know what?
Can.
I think that's actually, I would love to do, maybe in May, we'll do like all Star Wars movies that whole month. Because for what the prequels are, there's literally a character in it named Newt Gunray. And Newt Gingrich was a pretty big deal at the time.
Yeah.
They're talking about one guy seizing power and subverting democracy by capitalizing on everybody's fear. That's not too different from the Patriot Act. Or if you're one of those 9/11 truthers, it's not too different from that either, which resulted in the Patriot Act. So whatever.
Yes.
So before we go into it, how do you want to do different characters? Do you want to do plot points? Because I think we could do like the rebellion the Empire.
I mean, I think we should discuss the plot.
We should discuss the plot. Okay, before we do, guys, we're going to give you a spoiler warning. That's right. That's not just it's not just the Death Star being shut down or whatever or anything else. That ringing you hear in your ears is the spoiler warning. So if you don't want detailed plot spoilers, please stop listening and go watch Rogue One, a Star Wars story. But if you're ready for it, then so am I. Ty, let's give him the plot, please.
The daughter of an Imperial scientist joins the Rebel Alliance in a risky move to steal the plans for the Death Star. Simple and to the point, but it's so much more.
So yeah, just the way this movie starts off, and I'm not going to go too much into the particulars of like the cinematography or anything. This movie's a beautiful fucking movie. It introduces an interesting part of the Star Wars lore that we're not normally used to. Like, we do see the title Star Wars, but here we see the war. Like, we see people on the ground. And you know, they're in the thick of it, and they show how ugly it is and how disgusting rebellions really can be, that even though you might be the good guy, you're going to have to do some bad things to achieve your ends. And that's what this movie brings in. Also, one thing I forgot to mention about the original trilogy, not the prequel trilogy, but the original trilogy, Return of the Jedi was an allegory for Vietnam.
Yeah, there you go.
The Empire was destroyed by guerrilla tactics by a bunch of people living in in a forest. Like, They used guerrilla tactics. You know, the Ewoks were the Viet Cong. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, so we start off with this guy, Director Krennic, and it is interesting how they really go into the bureaucracy of the Empire in this.
Yeah, they do.
This movie. You know, all we ever saw in the other movies was Darth Vader, Emperor, Stormtroopers, and we
well,
did have
not exactly. I mean, he had his moths. Remember, he would always choke him out at the meetings.
I remember Tarkin. Yeah.
You know, so that's always been an aspect of it. It just wasn't really heavily focused on. I think Krennic gets a larger role than the majority of them do.
You mean to tell me that Vader choking out a subordinate for their incompetence isn't bureaucracy? No, it actually isn't bureaucracy, but it's what people would like to do if they've ever had to work in it. And we'll talk about that at the end of the movie, actually, because that's exactly what that is. It's just cleaning up a mess that your subordinates fucked up. But yeah, so Director Krennic is talking to Hannibal Lecter, and he's telling him that
otherwise known as Galen Erso.
Otherwise, yeah, Galen Erso, played by Mads Mikkelsen, and you know, they need him to come back and engineer a weapon for him. We find out it's going to be the Death Star, and they had this one line, and Krennic says, you know, we're looking to restore peace throughout the galaxy, and Erso says, not peace, terror, and he just says, you got to start somewhere. So, you know, this kind of reminds me of how there are so many politicians who get right in front of your face and say, like, this is about peace, this is about law and order, this is about justice, this is about protecting Americans. But you know what it's really about. Like, he says that, like, peace is about control. That's what it is. It's about your brand of justice, your brand of peace, not universal justice.
Right.
I also found it interesting how he said they have a child find it. Kind of a... you know, an interesting comment, because he doesn't really care about the gender of the kid. You know,
no.
It's just It's, they just want to use him as bargaining chips. Won't somebody please think of the children? Like, you know, you see that that narrative today, right? Because of what happened at the Capitol, there are people going, the result of that is, you know, big tech is scrubbing a lot of white supremacists from social media websites, and scrubbing white supremacist social media from the web as well, or certain companies aren't choosing to make them available anymore. And other people are saying, oh, you can take all these get rid of all these Twitter accounts, but you can't get rid of child porn on the internet.
Which is kind of hilarious, because obviously Twitter's a private company and they're the ones removing the people from their platform, right? But
yeah, you know, like, people have no idea how the internet works, but that's what it always comes to, right? When masks happened, they said, oh, you know who loves masks? Pedophiles. Yep. Like, it always ends up being, oh, let's save the children. What about the children? You never care about the children when they get shot up in schools. So why are you trying to use them as bargaining chips?
It's even the argument against the trans community, right? Like, you know, like...
oh, yeah.
They're gonna go in and rape somebody in the bathroom, you know? They could rape a child, or, you know, like, that's... You see that argument used over and over and over again. Even when it really makes no sense, they just keep pushing it. Because, you know, if you put kids out there, it always pulls at the heartstrings, so why not use that?
And guess what? It's already illegal to rape people in bathrooms.
Yes.
And anywhere. Yes. It is already illegal to rape. So... unless you're the current or most recent president of the United States. But I was kind of blown away by how they could make shitty stormtrooper dolls. Like they have the most advanced tech, but there's no Bandai in this universe, in this galaxy, because that stormtrooper doll that Jin had was terrible.
They probably made it, dude. Like they didn't have a whole lot, all right? They made it out of rocks and sticks.
Her father's an engineer. But yeah, I mean, maybe they did. So we get introduced to Saw Gerrera real quick. Did you want to talk about him now or later when we get to Jedha?
I mean, it doesn't matter. I think it's interesting that he had a connection to Galen Erso, right? Like, he's the one that they contact when Krennic arrives. You know, they're like, he's found us. So, you know, they've become obviously radicalized, you know, the Erso family. And you know, as they take Galen away, they kill the mother. And luckily they don't find Jin, and she winds up being raised by Saw Gerrera, who, you know, we find out later kind of her real relationship with him and what it was like being alongside him.
Yeah, now Che Guevara, I mean Saw Gerrera, is played by Forrest Whitaker, and he is an extremist, in the words of the rebellion, in the words of fucking Mon Mothma, excuse me. Mon Mothma pisses me off in everything I've ever seen her in.
What makes him an extremist, though, over the Rebel Alliance? When we see, like, some really fucked up moves from them. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
They're willing to kill
it.
Yeah, I mean, like, we meet, you know, Cassian Andor, who's like, he's just a rebel, right? He's on the ground, he's boots on the ground, he's a fighter, he's a leader, and he winds up meeting up with a contact. And, you know, they're having a little bit of an argument, and it draws the attention of some stormtroopers. So, of course, he kills the stormtroopers. And his contact starts freaking out, you know. He's like, no, this can't be happening. And what does he do? He kills the contact, too. You know, so right off the bat, they show that, you know, he's going to do what it takes to get the information he needs and keep things quiet. So, you know, his introduction is one that's kind of seedy, you know, and he's supposed to be the hero.
Yeah, and where he finds his conscience later on and chooses not to assassinate Jin's father, the rebellion fucking bombs this dude and kills him anyway. Like most Star Wars movies deal with the light and the dark side, but this movie really does deal with the gray side. You know, because the rebellion are, for all intents and purposes, the good guys. But they have to do some really fucked up shit. Like, that dude, clearly, he was going to talk if he was caught. That dude
absolutely.
that Cassian met up with. Yeah, so he's like, I got to do what I got to do.
But, like, when you think about it, isn't that a great, you know, analogy for real life? You know, like, how many times have we seen rebel groups, like you said, like, you know, like Che or Fidel Castro even, you know? People will say, well, they did horrible things. But, you know, they did it in order to save their people and to end, I guess, a greater horror, you could say, you know. So, unfortunately, you do got to get your hands dirty sometimes. And you know, in a fight like this where the galaxy literally rides on, you know, whether or not you can stop this empire, you know, you're going to have to do some, you know, pretty messed up stuff.
And you also have to take into account that this has been a decades-long struggle. It's not like this takes place right after Revenge of the Sith. You know, Cassian has been in this fight, as he says, since he was 6 years old. It's been decades, and they have been hammered to the point of desperation. And to see someone like Mon Mothma exercise her privilege and say, like, we can't be the bad guys or whatever is insane, because you have to make some desperate moves in order to get a win here. The Empire is building a death machine that can blow up planets. Like, you got to get them now or never.
Yeah.
And you know, at the beginning of A New Hope, the introduction scrawl says crawl. The crawl says that the rebellion just scored their first win against the Empire. They haven't been winning at all. So, like, yeah, they're gonna be some pretty shitty people. Like, they're desperate.
I mean, they're outgunned, right? They don't have the technology. They don't have, you know, the military training. They don't have the weaponry. You know, maybe they have the people. You know, there's certainly tons of people that want to fight for the Alliance, but, you know, fear is a great motivator for the opposite, and I think that's where Krennic's trying to accomplish here. You know, the goal is to build the Death Star. You know, and the Death Star is an ultimate weapon that can literally wipe out planets. And if you have a weapon like that, who's going to speak out against you? It's kind of like dropping a nuclear bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? Like, once you do that, no one's going to ever try to fight you again. And realistically, America has dominated the world since then. You know, our conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan were really us attacking, right? Going in there. We've never had anyone invade American soil, not since Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always been my argument, that the whole like, oh, they're out there protecting our freedom, protecting our rights. From what? There hasn't been a war fought on American soil until next week when the Civil War happens.
On the 20th, yes.
Guys, enjoy this last episode before we're recruited.
We'll record like a couple from the bunker, you know?
Yeah, there we go.
You are the resistance, John Connor style.
There you go. Welcome to... Shut the fuck up, Mike. Sorry, welcome to...
They're right above us. They're right above us.
Oh, my God. Someone's gonna... They're sniffing up top like the ring wraiths. They're like...
Oh, God.
Soy boys, vegans, snowflakes. But I want to go back to that question you asked. You said, what makes Saw Gerrera an extremist as opposed to the rebellion? Because the rebellion does some pretty fucked up shit too. I think it's a couple things. And I'm not saying he is. They are.
Right.
I'm saying he's an extremist because he won't listen to what Mon Mothma says.
Yep.
And they didn't mention it in this movie, but in Rebels, they do mention that he's murdered stormtroopers after they've surrendered. Which, guess what? The stormtroopers fucking murder people without a second thought. I'm sorry that they're surrendering. I know that they're people, but they are choosing to have that job. And, you know, this sounds very similar to other rhetoric that we have had, because you can't be a good stormtrooper in a corrupt system, right? Like, there's no stormtroopers in the Empire who are good guys because the Empire itself is evil. And I know that a lot of people don't see that in this galaxy. Like, some people do. The rebellion does. You know, even Mon Mothma is a senator. Like, she is working with the rebellion and trying to keep it under wraps. But, you know, the Empire appears as the good guys. That's how Palpatine sees power in the first place. You know, we are the good guys. We are trying to bring order to the galaxy. We're trying to bring peace and justice. And, they control.
And he did it, right,
media.
by managing both sides. Like, he was literally controlling both armies. You know,
yes, it was kind of like Republic.
It was kind of like arming, like, you know, Al Qaeda, right? Like, we created Al Qaeda ourselves, like America did, and you know, they eventually, you know, turned on us. But, you know, it's kind of the same thing we see with Palpatine. That's what he did. He created a war to give himself that power. You know, just like we constantly create wars in America because we make so much money off it. We can take oil, you know, manufacturing of weapons, like those kind of things. Really, really push, you know, the imperial agenda, and I think, you know, there's a lot here that between Star Wars and in the real world, and, you know, for anyone to say that's not accurate is just not paying attention.
Yeah, honestly, like the whole like, oh, why do we have to put politics into everything? Politics is in everything because it's in all of us. So
Yep.
If you create something, you are creating something political. You are creating something that has your own personal biases in it, whether you know it or not. You are.
Yep.
Like, I was thinking about V for Vendetta the other day, because I watched the movie again, and which, by the way, does posit civil wars in the U.S. In 2020. Oh, it's 2020. Well, it's 2020 Part 2. I'm not going to call it 2021 unless I'm putting it on a check or something. But
it was set up in 2020, so.
Yeah, I was thinking about V for Vendetta because if you watch that movie, you very well could be on the right and also interpret it as a calling to you. Like, I saw it as a calling to be like, you know what? Like, we got to rise up and we got to fight the powers that be and all this other stuff. We got to fight censorship. We got to fight the over-militarization of the state and all this other stuff. But anybody who watches that movie might also think, like, oh, this could be calling to me. I need to go and defend Trump and stuff like that. And I thought about that. And you and I have gone back and forth off mic a lot, right? Like, there's passion. There's so much passion on both sides. How can you determine which one is right? Like, because I feel like, at some points it's pointless. You can't reason with certain people. Like, maybe white supremacy is, you know what? Never mind. I'm not going to say that because it get taken out of context. And
yeah.
But what if we're wrong? What if equality is wrong? What if people aren't meant to have rights? And like,
I've thought of that. I thought of like, what if God himself came to this earth and we could ask him, you know, like, would he tell us we were the right ones, or would he just, you know, who knows, right? Like you said, it's really hard to tell who's right and who's wrong. And there are similar viewpoints on both sides. Like you said, you know, fighting against oppression, you know, it's just different interpretations of oppression, but we're both fighting against it. But, you know, I think something that we've kind of been talking about lately off mic is, I think, Nazis are a great indicator of the right and wrong side,
Yeah.
as the
Everyone has
universal
agreed.
evil like in the world, right? I think everyone, including Germany, especially Germany, they don't fucking want to be associated with Nazis ever again. Will admit that Nazis are the ultimate evil force. They've tried to exterminate an entire people. They tried to invade the entire world. They did horrible experiments and torture, and I mean, you name it. And Nazis did some evil shit. And like every
hysterectomies at the border.
Shit.
Wait a second.
And like how many movies or video games have made Nazis the villains? But then you're supposed to think that them storming the Capitol building and they're the good guys. So you got to really look at that and say, obviously they're the bad guys. If Nazis are here, we're on the wrong side.
Listen, the only people who don't think Nazis are bad are the Nazis. And even then, you gotta have a sense. Like the Sith, they kind of know.
Oh, the Sith absolutely know. They just know they're powerful. That's why they do it.
Yeah, so like the Nazis, even then you kind of gotta know. But I mean, you remember when the Wolfenstein, the most recent one, came out, and like the advertisement said like punch a Nazi or something like that, and the fucking right lost their mind. It's like, yo, you're saying you're pro-Nazi if you have a fucking problem.
That's exactly
with
what they were saying.
But I also thought about another thing, and I know that this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it's important to make this distinction. Because I said, after, Mad Max and V for Vendetta and all the other stuff we've been reading and watching and putting together, a lot of our favorite creators are socialists. So, because in the V for Vendetta comic book, they make it a point to say that Evie's parents were socialists.
Yes. Yep.
V makes it a point to say that they eradicated some races more thoroughly than others because Evie has never heard Motown. And even in the movie, you see that owning a Quran is illegal.
Yes.
Like owning particular types of art. So you gotta look at this. You gotta look at the stuff you love and see in it like, hey, like maybe. I don't know, if I love Luke Skywalker and he comes out on Twitter saying that Trump's a dick, maybe I'm on the wrong side. Because,
I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Because they'll be like, well, Mark Hamill's a piece of shit, not my Luke Skywalker. It's like, I mean, he's literally Luke Skywalker, so.
He's been your Luke Skywalker. Yeah. I think he's been the only Luke Skywalker. Even Steve Zahn wrote Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. So, not Steve Zahn. What the fuck?
I was like,
what is his
name?
Comedian? That's
Timothy Zahn?
He was at Saving Silverman. Who was
Timothy Zahn?
Timothy Zahn, the writer of the yes. And speaking of the books, real quick, we do want to let you guys know that there is a prequel book to this that I actually might look into reading it after I'm done with the survival book for the Patreon. That has no subscribers.
But you could be the first.
Yes, you certainly can be. Jazz Cam, it's all on you, please. But yeah, so there's a book called Catalyst that's actually a prequel book to Rogue One, and that might explain a little bit how Saw got to know Galen Erso and stuff like that.
Because we do see Saw quite a bit, well, not quite a bit, but a little bit in Clone Wars and Rebels, but yeah, his relationship with Jyn is not super extensively gone into in the film here. We're also getting a Cassian Andor TV show, which will give us his backstory a little bit more. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and you know what? If we have time, we'll talk about it at the end. I was going to get into it, but I don't want to. Oh, by the way, did you notice that Cassian and that dude, when the stormtroopers came up on them, it was like you when we used to just eat Domino's pizza in the summer, just hanging out by the cars. Every time a cop rolled by, we're like, oh, fuck, because we were drunk and eating pizza.
Bro, I was already ACAB back then. I didn't even realize it.
You didn't even realize it, bro. Well, I've always said that, like even when I was all about like rah, I love the country, I love cops, and they're the good guys and everything, they're the heroes. Like I've never seen a cruiser and thought, oh, thank God.
Yes, yeah.
Like,
that feeling of dread you get when you see a police officer kind of tells you everything you need to know. So it's kind of like seeing an Imperial stormtrooper.
Yes, the Imperial troopers, the First Order Imperial storm. They do call them that. So, yeah, so you're right. They also mention here that they have labor camps, which is interesting because in The Mandalorian, the New Republic has labor camps too. So showing once again that, absolute power is still going to corrupt absolutely, whether you have altruistic intentions or not.
So I was going to say, so you brought up how Mon Mothma, kind of makes them out to be the heroes, right? The Rebel Alliance is not going to do horrible things. They're not extremists. But again, throughout this film, we see them doing extreme moves, right? So they actually break Jin
that she
out of
either
prison.
isn't aware of.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh wait, no, she is aware. You're right. Sorry. Continue.
So they break her out of prison, right? Cassian breaks her out and recruits her so that they can get a meet and greet with Saw Gerrera. And like they're using her. They're using her ultimately to kill her father, right? That's the ultimate plan. They want to meet Saw Gerrera, find out some information, track down Galen Erso, and kill him so he can't help them help the Imperials finish the Death Star. And obviously they're not open about this with Jin. They tell her they want to help her find her father, that she needs to help the Rebel Alliance because they're the good guys. And they're already lying to her. So,
already,
yeah, right off the bat. And she's very reluctant to join them. She wants like you said, she wants no part of this fight. She's had a very, very rough life. And I think I think it's hard for her to see who the good guys and the bad guys are. She sees kind of through the Rebel Alliance a little bit and realizes they're not perfect.
Well, especially because she was raised by an extremist.
Yes.
It's like whenever you're talking to somebody about how bad the right is, and they say, yeah, well, at least the Democrats are blah blah blah, and I'm like, no. No.
So yeah, Jin eventually does reunite with Saw, and I thought this is actually one of the best scenes in the movie, even though Saw's his voice is a little over the top.
Do you think Forrest Whitaker gained any weight from chewing all that scenery, or no?
I was like, God damn, this dude. He's like Darth Vader.
Well, that's kind of the point, though.
Yeah, I guess
what do you have to become to defeat your enemies? And they do put that in the trailer along with a lot of other awesome shit that doesn't make it into the actual movie. But yeah.
But, so they reunite, and Jin says the last time they saw each other, he gave her a knife and a loaded blaster and told her to wait in a bunker till daylight. And he says, I knew you'd be safe. And she's like, you left me behind. And he says, you were already the best soldier in my cadre? I don't know how to pronounce that, but
Cadre,
thank you.
Now you're making me.
I think it was cadre
right in my head.
And she says, I was 16, and he goes, I was protecting you. Your father was an Imperial trooper, an Imperial scientist, and like think about that. Like he basically tried to militarize a child. He gave her weapons and said she was the best soldier in his army at 16 years old. So that had to be really traumatizing.
Yeah, I mean, you think of, you just think of child soldiers in real life, or even if you don't want to go that extreme, just think about how people have had to grow up quicker than they were supposed to because of the world and how it's raised them and just the kind of monsters that are put out into the world. I'm not saying Jin necessarily is one, but, Saw definitely is, right?
Yeah.
Like, in it not too long after, or actually, was it slightly before, he literally uses torture techniques on Bodhi Rock in order to get the truth out of him about
even though Bodhi was giving him the truth, right? He was cooperating and he still tortured him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly though, he is an Imperial. Like, it sucks because as the audience, we can assume that Bodhi is a solid dude, but if you're in there, dude, you've been in this fight for how many years? Your mind is warped, man.
Yeah.
Anyone that smells of Empire, you can't trust. Right. And I think even to that point, they said in another podcast I was listening to, and I don't know, they must have mentioned it in the movie, but I missed it, that Saw said that they were going to use her as a hostage in order to get to her father, in order to get to the Empire. I'm not sure if it was his own people, I think it was, but you know what? The rebels could do it too, because the rebels are using Jin as a bargaining chip here. They're saying that we'll let you go if you introduce us to Saw. And in that in and of itself is like, well, so are you going to put her back in prison if she doesn't cooperate? Okay, great. Thank you, Mothma.
Yeah. You're not going to actually do the right thing. You're going to do what you have to do to get what you need. And that's, not really too much different from Saw or the Empire.
Another big thing I want to mention here, just while we do talk about the politics of the Star Wars universe, is that the biggest problem with people finding out about the Death Star, finding out about the stuff that the Empire does, because while the Rebellion knows it, while the audience knows it, the galaxy at large isn't necessarily aware. I mean, at the beginning of A New Hope, Luke wants to join the Empire.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to go into the flight academy. He's like, oh, it's like joining the Air Force to him.
Yep.
And but they do make it a point to show that they cover up a lot of stuff, and they say that if the public found out about the Death Star, all of the systems would flock to the rebellion. So that's the problem. Finding out the truth is the problem here. And for as powerful as the Empire is, they know that they cannot maintain control without fear and deception, which is interesting because Vader is not about that.
No, he's not.
But yeah, but the Emperor very much is. And like I said, bureaucracy is a bitch.
But again, Vader's from a different, cut from a different cloth, so to speak.
I was wondering if Mothma sanctioned the Battle of Yavin because she seems to be so anti-violent sometimes. It's ridiculous. I mean
she must have, though. I mean, it comes to a point where you have to.
Yeah, it depends on when it's safe, right? She doesn't want anyone to do anything mean. Like, she doesn't want Saw Gerrera to kill people after they surrender, but,
But it's a war.
Meanwhile, yeah, it's a war. Unfortunately, it's fucking war. I also mentioned this is so stupid. When the ship was leaving Yavin 4, I was like, oh, thank God they had the guy tracking the ship just like in the other movies. I wouldn't have bought it otherwise.
So like around the time we meet Saw, we also have like some other interesting moments, right? We meet Chirrut, who's like he's a blind, Force-sensitive man. He's not a Jedi, right? But I
think he was guarding the temple.
He was guarding the Jedi temple, one of the last Jedi temples. It was a holy city of Jeddah, right? And this is like one of the last remnants of the Jedi Order, and people go there, and he's guarding it. But again, he's not a Jedi, but he is Force-sensitive. And he has like a partner, right? Like a friend, I guess, who's a mercenary.
Oh, their partner's all right.
Baze, I don't know. I think that's how you say his name. They don't really say his name much, but so I thought was kind of cool was when Saw kind of captures this whole group, because they all wind up linking up and going together because Chirrut kind of senses something within Jin and wants to kind of see this through. He says to Cassian that there's more than one sort of prison, Captain, and I sense you carry yours wherever you go. I thought that was a good line, because obviously Cassian does some really bad things, but he's not necessarily a bad person. And I think the weight of his sins does kind of, weigh down on him. He does feel it, and I think he wants to do the right thing, but he's just so devoted to the cause that, time and time again, he finds himself, pulling the trigger and doing the dirty work. But it's kind of like lays the breadcrumbs for him to do the right thing later on when it comes to, Galen Erso and not pulling the trigger and killing him when he has the opportunity to.
Yeah, Donnie Yen as Chirrut really, really kills it. A lot of the cast is fantastic in this film. And that was another thing too, is that we see that this is a much more diverse cast than we normally see. They're
Absolutely.
not the pretty white people who we see in the A New Hope in the original trilogy. They're and I'm not saying these people aren't pretty either.
No.
In this movie, but yeah, and I think that definitely was a great choice. It's great to show that there are other races other than white humans and aliens. In the rebellion. Now, really quick, I want to go into Chirrut and Baze because there was some speculation as to whether or not they were a couple.
Okay.
And I looked into it because, like we said on the Lord of the Rings episode, right? Frodo and Sam really could just be friends. We don't have to relate every sort of emotional vulnerability to homoeroticism. That's not the case. But everyone they had asked, and you can find the articles. I don't have specific names, but you can find the articles. They're all in the show notes. They say that it's possible. They're like, well, we didn't say that they weren't a couple, and if you want to get that out of it, you totally can. And they were talking about it on the podcast as to when they actually die, and how Baze chooses to look at Chirrut as the last thing he sees, and the way they're holding he's holding him in his arms, which that could also just be a war movie, right?
Yeah, but, interesting.
Right? And I was like, huh. And they didn't say no, and they didn't say yes. They were like, if you want to get that out of it, then good for you guys.
Because I'll be honest, I didn't get that. How I saw it was that Chirrut was so devoted to the Jedi and to the Force, that through his, even in his death, he was able to really embrace it and use it to make a difference. And without, when Baze had lost kind of his hope, I guess, right? Like, I think Chirrut mentions that, like, Baze used to be the most devoted of all of them, but he stopped.
I missed that.
Yeah,
thank you for mentioning.
He brings that up, and I feel like Baze lost it, but he still has an allegiance to Chirrut. So once he's gone, he's lost everything. That was his last tie to to his former life and to anything that mattered to him. So, for me, that's kind of how I looked at it. But that's interesting. Maybe it was more than that. It could still be both. Yeah,
honestly, it could be Pavlov's gay guys. No, not Pavlov. Maybe Schrodinger. Yeah. I'm a fucking. I have a whenever I see gay guys, I drool. I don't know what to tell you. It's a Pavlovian thing. No, Schrodinger's gay couple, and I think when they also mentioned that JJ was like, oh, don't worry, we're gonna have gay people in the Star Wars universe, and ended up being in the third movie just random characters that don't have names kissing.
Yeah,
so if it does have to be, if you do have to have those characters, Chirrut and Baze are the guys. And that being said, if you and I were in a similar position, I would act exactly like Baze did.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like
I love you, I'm not in love with you, but I would still do that.
It's up for debate.
Depends on the day. Get a few drinks in me, Ty. I just want to mention Jeddah real quick before we work our way to the end of it, because Jeddah itself, we see that it is a desert-like planet. Jeddah City is a holy city. They make a point of noting that. We also see that there's a lot, when there's battles happening in the middle of Jeddah, it saws extremists against the Empire, that children are put at risk. Even though the good guys are fighting the bad guys, the innocent can still suffer in the middle of this conflict. And we also see that they're riding in on tanks, shouting about truth and justice. They're spouting this rhetoric about keeping order and saving these people while they mine the kyber crystals. They mine their natural resources. If that is not an allegory for the Middle East occupation by the United States for oil, I have no idea what is.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, But I'm, like you mentioned, I'm sure there's plenty of people who would say, no, that, why do we have to bring this into Star Wars?
They just want the kyber crystals.
Yeah, it's just about kyber crystals, man. They make lightsabers and shit.
Lucas is on the side of the Viet Cong, you fucking guys. Like his stuff or don't, make a choice.
There's a great line actually here too, where Saw says to Jyn. He asked her how she could stand to see the Imperial flag reign across the galaxy. And she said, it's not a problem if you don't look up. And to me, that's such a liberal mindset, right? Like if you just don't pay attention, if you just ignore it, if you go back to brunch, then it's not a problem. That's why people hated Trump, because it was so hard to ignore it, because it was always in your face. And up until now, Jyn has been able to act like this doesn't matter until it gets personal, and her father's brought into it, and she's brought into to find him, and that's when she finally realized she does have to get involved. She can't just keep ignoring it, and she gets radicalized, kind of like you and me and so many other people.
Yeah. So let's talk about Jyn being apolitical, because I was blown away by that. Luke was kind of in a similar position. It's just that he is very impressionable, it seems.
All his friends are pilots, so he wants to be a pilot too.
Yeah, and they made a joke about it in the Family Guy version when Luke's like, you don't believe in the Force? And Han's like, he's like, oh, you mean the thing you just learned about 1 hour ago? Yeah. He's like, oh, but yeah, so, because once again, the Empire appears as democracy to the public at large, because there still are senators, there still appears to be democracy. But Jyn also was raised in the Empire for a little bit. Not for long, but she was there on Coruscant with her father drinking it up with Director Krennic. Like, it might be weird for her to view the Empire as evil.
Wait,
she probably views Krennic as evil. Yeah, when they had the flashback. When he was drinking with Krennic.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and he said, "Oh, I'll protect you," blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Once again, I just listened to other movie review podcasts, so that way I had story beats I missed while I was taking notes. But I think that she, in her own way, she's kind of she could have been a military brat. So, no matter what side, this is kind of normal to her. I don't think her whiteness necessarily plays a role in this allegory, but if you want to look for it, you could. That most of the people that, not in the rebellion, but most of the people in this immediate group are people of color, and they don't have a choice but to fight.
True.
Cassian, once again, has been in it since he was 6 years old. And she has had the privilege of not getting involved. Her mom was killed by Imperial soldiers.
She was for a while,
Che
right?
Guevara.
Until 16.
Sorry,
she was until she was 16, I guess, And I the way I looked at it was she kind of saw both sides as being wrong, so she wanted to get out.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate take from it, definitely. So when we see everything come to a head on Jeddah, Moff Tarkin wants to... Well, he's Governor Tarkin for some reason, but I guess he gets promoted within the next 72 hours.
Yeah, he probably gets promoted for the Death Star, which he stole from.
Yeah, because he takes credit for it. Once again, the bureaucracy of the Empire is beautiful. We'll talk about it when they get to Scarif, because there's another funny moment that involves, just people following. But yeah, so they decide, all right, we're gonna blow up, we're gonna blow up Jeddah City. Single reactor fire, blah, blah, blah. And when they do, we never actually saw in the other movies what it looks like when they target a planet.
Yeah,
did their targeting system look familiar to you at all?
No.
It looked like a drone strike.
Oh,
display.
yeah, okay. I can see that.
Just like a drone strike display. And anyone who has never seen one, look it up.
That's
look
a good
up,
point.
Any of the videos that have been leaked from war crimes and stuff. The Death Star looks like it's drone striking that city, and yes, it does. So they kill a bunch of natives and in a holy city and destroy stuff.
And a lot of area around it, right, including Saw's hideout and all his fighters and his people. Like it's a mass extinction of people on this planet, pretty much.
Yeah, which Saw accepts, and we see that as a foreshadowing for later too. We also see that the pilot Bodhi, he was talking about how Galen told him to listen to his heart and to kind of redeem himself by following it. And I think it sounds corny, but it really is something that you have to think of, because you do have so many people throughout the past 4 years, and especially now, that refuse to believe. Like they were fooled by Trump, and they're in on it. They're in for a penny, in for a pound, and no matter what happens, they still refuse to believe that he is the bad guy. And in doing so, they are losing all of their morals.
Yeah.
Like, and I say morals very loosely, but to them, it's their morals, right? If you are a patriot, if you love the United States, then you believe in the system that we have. You believe in democracy as we have it. You don't want to change, because they say, oh, well, they kind of want to go back to business as usual. They don't want certain people to have civil rights, blah, blah, blah. So that means they want to keep things the same. So if you want to keep this country the same, that means you love this country as it is. That means that if Donald Trump threatens that country, you should be against him. That means that if his followers bludgeon a cop to death, meanwhile you spent the past... When did Trayvon Martin?
Oh, God, it's
2012, 2010?
Yeah, I think so.
Whatever. Ever since Black Lives Matter started, and even before then, you have always been pro-cop, no matter what. When people wanted to hold cops accountable, you doubled down and defended cops no matter what they did. And now all of a sudden you're losing that? You never had any morals to begin with. You're a fucking pussy. You have no backbone.
I mean,
you're a coward.
It's just like, Black Lives Matter's throwing, cans and bottles at cops. These Trump supporters are bludgeoning them with fire extinguishers and crushing them in between a door, and then it's like brutal and horrible. It's your Blue Lives Matter, but
yeah, and they literally brought explosives to the Capitol, and they had their own they had chemicals that they used.
Yeah.
They didn't say specifically what it was, but I'm not sure if you checked out the link I sent you of the war journalist who was at the Capitol.
I did.
Riveting.
Yeah.
It was insane to see this, and you could see the orange mist sprayed all over the visors from the chemicals they were using, of the cops. It's just surreal to see. And
they believe in America, right? But they went there to kidnap senators and congressmen. It's like
that you're attacking your own country.
Yeah,
you don't love your country. That was it.
Yeah, supposedly you love it so much, but you want to destroy your own democracy by killing the people that were, democratically elected. Are you going to say every one of those people was fakely voted in? Like none of that was real either? Do you think every election has been false? Does that mean you believe Trump was falsely elected? Like where does the truth and the lies?
Yeah, because this guy both times said, if I lose, I won't accept the results. He said it both times that he was going to be a sore loser and a little fucking bitch. And guess what? You bought it somehow with no evidence from people who watch mainstream media all the time. Because there are people who are poorly informed because they just do watch the mainstream media. They don't do any of their own research. And yet the mainstream media also said, there's no proof of voter fraud. So I mean, I don't know. I know we went off on a tangent here, but I do think it's important to talk about this. And should this be found decades later by historians, they'll go, oh, some fourth-rate podcast was talking about it. I think it is interesting to look at, like we look at movies when they were made and see what was influencing them at the time. This podcast is very much influenced by what's going on around it, and I think that these are very applicable comparisons to be making personally.
Absolutely. Definitely agree.
All I said is Jin similar to moving people left only after Trump's candidacy. That was me, guys. I got moved left a bit in college. I was like, all right, listen, like, I believe in systemic racism and the oppression of the LGBTQIA plus community, but I didn't know what to do. And,
you got brainwashed by college, huh?
I did, right? It's so funny. You college educated, fucking
you get
libs.
some education, and all of a sudden you're speaking out against racism like you think you learned from history. It's wrong.
You're acknowledging that I don't want to say better educated, but at least more educated than you to some extent. So maybe just listen a little bit.
Yep.
And honestly, a lot of my radicalism didn't come from college. It came from after.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys. Once again, Richard Medhurst, independent journalist. Syrian, UK citizen.
Probably your best way to get actual news. So.
Yeah. Why do you think Cassian didn't kill Galen?
I think because, like I mentioned earlier, he realized that his morals were in question, and he knew this. Maybe he buried those feelings deep down, but True brought it up. He got to learn, know Jin. And I think he just saw the constant murder and death around him. And he does witness Galen actually try to save his own people, right? Like, Krennic's going to shoot all the scientists except for Galen, and Galen steps forth and says, he's the one that sent Bodhi out. He's the one that tried to, undermine the Empire. So what do? They kill all his people anyway. And I think that, it's all...
Which was rough to see.
Yeah.
Because they are... Once again, you got to be reminded that they're Imperials. But I think this movie does a great job of just showing you humanity, right?
Yep.
Because Cassian sees the humanity in Galen because of Jin. He's, this guy had a daughter. This guy lost his wife. This guy is allegedly, according to Bodhi and Jin now, he is actively fighting the Empire from within. He made sure that Death Star got made with a flaw because somebody else would have done it without it.
Yeah, I mean, he technically saves the world, right, by doing this. He saves the galaxy. He saves several worlds. He
saves the system.
I think Galen's a great way of looking and seeing, okay, like I know you mentioned how all stormtroopers are bastards, but like, are all Imperials necessarily evil? Not necessarily. Well, like Galen's in a position where he didn't really have a choice. Like, he was captured and put here, so he decided to do some good with it.
And gave up everything in order to do it.
Yeah, so maybe these other scientists are in the same situation. Or maybe they really did think they were doing something good, but they pay for it with their lives. And I think, Cassian he's just had enough of sacrificing other people for the cause. So he decides not to pull the trigger. But luckily for him, the Rebel Alliance sent in some bombs to kill him anyway. So Galen gets killed by the rebels regardless.
Can we pause there for a sec? Why does Jin join the rebellion when they killed her father?
That was a really interesting question. I thought. Yes. On the one hand, yeah, you're right. Why would she do that? I think it was because it was Galen's dying wish.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, I think she did what he wanted. Not, she was like, well, I don't want to fucking help these guys, but this is what my father died for. I got to complete the mission. She's got to finish what he started. Stardust and all that. And that she kind of brings her own little group together anyway, because when push comes to shove, the rebels, they won't do anything, right? They won't fucking actually do anything. They're all talk. They're the fucking squad.
They say $2,000 checks would be great. They say Medicare for all would be great, but they don't actually fucking do it, do they?
They're the fucking squad. Nope. They're not going to do anything.
Baby.
Yep. And Jin, who is an independent, has to step forward and fucking try and get something done. And luckily she gets some of these these rebels to join her because they're drawn to her because she actually wants to take action. I think that's kind of a big moment for a lot of these people because they want to take action. They're sick of losing, and they finally see a way forward, a win. So she gets this little ragtag group of fighters to join her on this suicide mission.
And I think that Jin is kind of bringing new blood, new life into this rebellion. And that is important because, I think we can look at the Democratic Party now and kind of see that while we do have, quote unquote, the squad, which some people would call the fraud squad, and I see why. We do have the new young Democrats coming in, but still you have the older Democrats who are stopping any sort of progression toward a better world for people, toward a better life for the working class. And I say that to both the employed and the unemployed. It's just I don't have a good enough term. I want to say the lower class, but fuck, you guys are better than anybody else. Yeah, the people, the common, as Christopher Reeve said in Superman 2, Zod, think of the people. Or as Bane says in Dark Knight Rises, we give the power to you.
I mean, well, if you look at that, right? Like, I feel like every movie, whether it's a villain or a hero, they can use that, I'm helping the people argument for their cause. So, the people want help. They want fucking help, and they'll take it from anyone who offers it. And that's why, we get people like Trump supporters who think Trump is actually going to help them. So Jin's going to help people. She's going to actually do something. So people, this group joins her, including Cassian, who, she's very surprised. She even mentions, like, I'm not used to people sticking with me, and he finally wants to do some good, and he feels like this is a worthy cause.
Yeah, and I think also he just knows that, and you know what? I'm going to tie this back to Samurai X for the 0.5% of you who have actually seen the anime. But Kenshin mentions in that movie that because he knows what it is to be a man, and by that I mean an actual human, that he will fight to never have to fight again. Yep. And I think that's where Cassian is too. He says, like, we've done some things we're not proud of. We've assassinations and spying and sabotage and stuff. Like, I think he kind of wants this war to be over as soon as possible.
Agreed.
And if they can actually have a chance, I'm getting chills talking about this. Wow. If they can get a chance, and that's what Jin says later on, like, we're just going to keep taking our chances until they run out, right?
Yeah.
If you can get a chance to end this war before it gets any worse, like, do it. And they do pave the way for more new blood, right? Luke comes in not long after into the rebellion and is able to help.
Well, they literally show Red 5 die. And that becomes Luke's call sign.
Yeah, they do. Yikes.
So it shows you, like, hey, look, there's gonna be new, like you said, new fresh blood that's gonna come in and take the spot of these soldiers that have died.
Speaking of soldiers, not rebellion soldiers, I'm talking about Imperials. I'm going to propose a theory that stormtrooper armor actually makes you weaker, and here's why.
It definitely makes you less accurate.
It definitely does. No matter where a stormtrooper gets hit, they will fall immediately and die. They will get hit in the face by Donnie Yen and die. And guess what? He is a fantastic martial artist. I'm not saying he's not, but
he's got a stick, and they have fucking armor on.
He has a stick. Baze literally just hits rifle butts a dude, and he's down. Meanwhile, Director Krennic, who is not armored at all, gets shot in the shoulder, and he comes back from it. He's fucking fine. So,
all right, here's what the left doesn't want you to know, though. The stormtrooper armor, when you get hit, it actually sends a electromagnetic pulse through your body that paralyzes you temporarily, making you appear dead, while nanotechnology heals your wound.
I'm going to cut that out because that's actually genius.
Fuck,
imagine, how do they keep getting so many stormtroopers? You guys never fucking shot the head. I have another quick question here. And this is actually just comments on specific things. We'll talk about some, the politics in a couple seconds. But do you think, so Chirrut on what was the fucking planet they went to after Jeddah that Galen was on?
I don't
remember. The planet that Galen was on, Chirrut turns his staff into a crossbow cannon of some sorts and shoots a TIE fighter into not an establishment. What is it? An installation of some sort. Which once I would absolutely make this guy my character. If we were playing Star Wars action figures and you said, Mike, you can't use a lightsaber, I was like, all right, cool. This guy's a fucking martial artist who believes in the Force. And he beats the shit out of stormtroopers with his bare hands and a stick. And also it's a cannon sometimes. So, and he knows where it's gonna fall into. He has absolutely my.
I want his backstory. God damn it! Do a show about him and Beast. Right?
I really want to know. Imagine. Okay, so let's say it is canon that Chirrut is gay, and he just fucked all the Jedi because they weren't allowed to take wives. Like, Obi-Wan is like, he's like, Obi-Wan, you ever have sex with a guy? He's like, of course I know him. That's Chirrut.
He's like concubine. He just they keep
oh my
Chirrut
God,
around.
imagine. Oh, Jedi sex slave. That's terrible. But anyway, later on, when they're storming Scarif, Chirrut uses the staff to shoot a guy and he just falls down and dies. Shouldn't he have exploded like 10 of them if you could get through TIE Fighter?
Maybe he has different
hull?
levels, man.
It might have different levels. There is nothing Chirrut can't do. And you know what? I'll buy it because I've seen Force users do more ridiculous stuff than be blind and use the Force.
Dude, his death is so good, though. Right? I am one with the Force is with
chills.
me. And nobody can shoot this guy. Like, all these rebels are getting killed trying to hit this switch. And he's blind, just walking to the switch, just chanting this about the Force. And Star Wars makes it very obvious that the Force is real, right? It's not an imaginary thing. It really is there. So
yeah, there are people who are Force sensitive. Like, even if you don't believe in the Force, which some people consider to be an outdated religion because you killed all the people who practiced it. Is that a Islam? No. That's a different podcast. I didn't put that in my notes. I'm not prepared to defend that.
But yeah, I mean, he has faith, and faith actually comes through for him. And I really liked it.
And for somebody who believes in the Force but doesn't actually use it to physically manipulate items around him, it is a faith. You know, like all of his force is, it's like Ka from the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
It's fate working its way around him because
he uses it to guide him, right? It's a guide for him. It's not a power. You can't force push people and fly around, but it guides him in the right direction and leads him, to do the right thing. And to sense things that maybe a regular person without that ability or that faith wouldn't be able to do, and it makes him a very interesting character, and obviously Baze has a lot of faith in Chirrut, and that's which I kind of liked. He may have lost his faith in the Force, but not in his friend or partner, and that's it says something about about people, and we just need something to believe in, whether it's a person or a religion or a cause.
I think it's each other because me believing in Biden or Harris or any elected official or even a celebrity, that does not help me in any way, shape, or form. But if I believe in my common man or woman or non-binary or anyone in between, if I believe in that person, I'm believing in myself, because I might have said it in housekeeping last week. I'm not sure if I have, but I've told you about it. And it's, I think the American condition is to attach ourselves to icons. That's why we put up statues. That's why we make biopics about people and stuff. And I think that's a problem. You should never have a favorite president because all presidents are war criminals. Sure, some of them might have done some really good stuff, but they are elected officials. They are there to serve you. They should not be favorite anything. Yeah. And the problem with that is, and let's say it's with Trump, and I've also seen it with liberals and Biden, no matter what they do, you will excuse it because you voted for them. You can't be wrong.
Or Obama.
Yeah, believe in each other, just as true fucking Baze did. God. I also saw one of the rebels actually refer to an AT-AT as an AT-AT, and that was beautiful because that's what fans will normally call AT-ATs. They'll call them AT-ATs, and he sees one. He's like, AT-AT, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't speaking the common tongue. So.
That was cool, though. That was a nice moment.
And of course, this is the last, and there is a very solid overview in the show notes, an article that was written 4 years ago of the film and its allegories. Don't be put off by the headline. It starts out with, is political correctness in Star Wars a good idea? And I was like, you know what? Let's read this. Because I do like to read the right-wing stuff to see what their criticisms were and see if I can debunk them or maybe see if they had a point or whatever, like I did with Mad Max. But there was actually, he was like, yeah, this was good to put in
He's
there.
like, yes, the answer is yes.
That's the article. He goes, is it? Yes, done. But he has a really great overview of just the allegories in this. And I think also there's a hyperlink in that article of all the stuff that was in the trailer that was super cool that was kept out. But the final battle in this film is storming a beach. Once again, they are saying if storming a beach isn't the most in-your-face allegory. Now, once again, it's more of a World War II thing, but, it's always been in Star Wars.
I think obviously this scene is amazing. It's a very long battle scene. It's all about sacrifice. Again, each of these characters gives their life in some way to help move this plan along. From K2SO, the droid, to Chirrut, the force sensitive, guardian. All these people die for this cause. All these rebels on the ground fighting, and eventually the Rebel Alliance does come through. Right, they actually do show up. They send help, and what I love is that they shut down the planet. Right, they put like a shield up, and they can't get the information out, so they have to ask the Rebel Alliance to blast a hole in the shield so they can basically broadcast the signal.
But in order to ask them, they have to activate something. Yeah, keep going.
Oh, I mean, obviously the broadcast isn't hooked up to the ship because it's just a ship, so they have to connect to the actual installation's broadcast system to contact the rebels in order to do.
If Mothma would have fucking approved this from the beginning, this would have been such a smoother.
Yeah, they might have actually lived.
They wouldn't have had to have gone through this.
They probably would have lived. Actually, they could have done this very quickly.
And what's important, and I'm sorry to cut you off. I know I always fucking do it.
You do.
And thank you for being you. But what's important here is that it's not just like everybody dies. It's everybody dies doing something that if they didn't do it, those plans would have never made it to the rebellion.
Yep, exactly. Like they all have a very distinct purpose, and they all die not knowing if they are successful. And I think that's the most poetic moment of all. They all die hoping that the plan succeeds, hoping that they get it to the rebels and that they can stop the Death Star. But none of them will ever actually know this, except for Chirrut, who says he'll be in the Force, so maybe he knows. But and of course, if you know anything about Star Wars,
the Force doesn't like gay people.
It is successful. Luke is able to destroy the Death Star because they know where this weakness is, and so all these people died. And they did it for the right reason, and they were able to save the galaxy by destroying this. But again, they don't know this. They all die, and Cassian and Jyn are the last two to go, and they just kind of hold each other as everything comes to an end on the installation. And I think that just wanting to be with another person in those final moments and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. And an interesting point that was made, once again, I didn't come up with it, but when that final blast is happening, Jyn is looking toward it, very similar to how Saw looked toward his own demise. Cassian looks away.
Interesting.
He just holds her, And I'm not gonna say, I don't know what I would fucking do personally.
No, of course, it's terrifying.
I would have been Bodhi, honestly. And it's so funny because you've said it in other episodes before. Like everybody has a part to play. You may not be the person on the front lines, staring down the powers that be with their rifles and stuff. You might be the person behind the scenes. You might be the Bodhi.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the badass out there, right? Shooting down stormtroopers, but if he doesn't get that transmission out, nothing's successful. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this doesn't happen without him. And also, I want to say that he would have never been on this mission if it weren't for Cassian trying to talk to him, because Saw let him go insane. Did we mention that Saw used torture? He used psychic squid waterboarding. Okay,
we didn't mention the specific torture, but we did say he tortured
we
Bodhi.
did. Okay. But yeah, so Bodhi lost his mind. Insanity is a side effect of having this alien look into all of your thoughts and interrogate you, and he remembers I'm the pilot because Cassian was the one to do it. So because he was able to remember who he was. You want to think again, follow your heart, remember who you are, remember your morals and your values. Yeah. You can still change. You can still turn, you can still come back, you can
do the right thing.
Yeah.
It's never too late.
Like if you truly are a patriot. And once again, I'm not going to say that you have to be. I don't consider myself a patriot. I don't consider myself a person who loves the United States. I don't love land. Land is temporary. You can't own it. You exist on it for a bit and then you become it. So you
should love the people, right? Like you should love the people, and if you support, violence and murder and taking what you want from people, then what do you really love? Nothing but yourself.
Yeah, and you know what? And I, unfortunately, certain things have to be done, and I pray they won't have to be. I pray that just voting and being educated and informing and helping each other, mutual aid. I pray that can help. And by the way, by pray I mean hope.
Yes.
That can change things. and that no blood has to be shed, right?
Yep.
You know, it was like I was thinking about it today, emptying out the dishwasher because everyone needed to know. In the first Captain America movie, he talks to Steve Rogers, Dr. Erskine, and he says, "Do you want to kill Nazis?" And he says, "I don't want to kill anybody. I just don't like bullies." And that's it, man. You know, even in a Black Lives Matter protest, I don't want the protesters to die, but I don't want the oppressors to die either. And I know it's stupid, right? But, you know, I think they were just led into, oh, well, if I become a cop, I'm going to be a hero. I'm going to save the world. Cops are always great because that's all we get fed. We get fed propaganda. We don't get told. And by the way, it is law enforcement museums and websites have noted that the police have started as slave catchers and union breakers.
Yeah.
Like, so, you know, we just get told this other thing. You know, I think that the police are also members of the working class, and their bodies are the ones that are put on the line to protect the 1% from the rest of the working class. And same thing with soldiers. Soldiers are, in the words of Serge Tankian, why don't the presidents fight the war? Why do they always send the poor?
Oh, I like that.
System of a Down.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, especially for white people, we're raised to believe that, you know, these are the good guys. These are how you become heroes, and you know, and we don't realize that it's, you know, a system of oppression, and by joining that system, you're helping, you know, hold it up. Because you know, if no one joined the army, no one joined the police, who would the 1% call on? No, they would have no one. They don't have the balls to do it themselves.
And sure that, you know, when you die, they'll put a fucking United States flag over your coffin. They'll, you know, oh, sorry to your wife and kids, but that's it. You're just forgotten after that. You know, like you were just another pawn that was put in the front lines.
Yep.
You know, so you know, so that I know I got off on a bit of a tangent as I tend to do, and also I want to say that while I do hope, rebellions are built on hope.
Nice.
Tell me about Vader, Ty. Give me Big Daddy V.
Oh man, I mean, like, so we do see him earlier in the film, right? When Krennic comes to him to beg for his help because of Tarkin trying to steal his ideas, and he goes crying to Daddy Vader, and he wants him to help,
Yep.
and Vader just fucking, you know, chokes him out. He's like, you know, leave me alone. You know, Vader doesn't care about, you know, politics. He doesn't care about, you know, these kind of things. He's just, you know, he believes in strength. You know, he believes in the dark side, and you know, he is a force to be reckoned with. He doesn't need to play, you know, these little mind games and things like that.
He's not about the bureaucracy.
No, and he's very upfront.
And now you, Tyler, so you are a manager at your job, right?
I am.
Sorry, people probably might not know your full name's Tyler. Ty, so you, Ty, you were a manager at your job, so you can relate to Vader in this, because Vader is relaxing, right? He's at home, taking a nap, taking a bath. Okay, all of a sudden, some dude comes in. He's like, Vader, Tarkin was mean to me, and he's saying he's going to tell the Emperor it was his idea. That's like you getting a phone call during a game of D&D.
I've had that happen multiple times.
And then he, you know, and he's like, you know, he tells him not to choke on his aspirations because while Vader cares about what you said he cares about, he has his own values. This other guy just cares about upward mobility.
Right.
He cares about looking good. I think he couldn't care less about the peace in the galaxy, and he says as much as at the beginning. He doesn't really believe that it's going to be peaceful. But while I do believe there are certain people in the Empire who actually might. Oh, and speaking of which, I thought it was hilarious when they finally saw that Scarif was being attacked, when all the explosions were going off, and all the Imperials are looking, and Krennic is like, "Are you blind?" he's like, "Get to work!" Like, and they're like, "Oh yeah."
He's like, mobilize the fucking defenses here. Like, what are we doing?
They're all ready to follow orders. But so Vader has to deal with the bureaucracy, and then Krennic still fails, and the Death Star plans end up getting beamed up, and you can see just the managerial anger in Vader when that lightsaber ignites. He's like, "You're gonna be fucking kidding me!"
Yep, and the coolest scene in the movie, we see angry Vader show up. Yep. Oh man, he's just like, I gotta fucking clean up another mess, right? Like,
seriously. And even that, if you really know the lore, you want to go deep into the comic books and the extended universe novels, like that is still just a fraction of what Darth Vader is actually capable of. And
but it was just cool to be able to finally see him in
it was awesome,
in real action, because, you know, unfortunately, as much as I love the original trilogy, he wasn't like jumping around and stuff. He was just kind of waving his hands, right? But this was, he's pulling people with the force, throwing them up against the ceiling and chopping them in half, and he's cutting through these rebels and firing their own blasts back at them, and they can't get the door open, and it's actually like really terrifying, right?
I would shit my
he's
pants.
like, help
he's like
us!
banging on the door. He's like, let it open the door, like open the door, and he is able to slide the hard drive in through there. Oh my god, that was insane.
And then seconds later, Vader fucking opens the door anyway, and he starts killing all the rebels in the next room. Right? It's like, oh. And
luckily
shit.
they're able to get it, get out, and episode 4 and New Hope is the next part.
I just love that
Vader's
whole
just
scene,
standing
man.
there, and he's like, you got to be fucking like, he didn't shake his head, but I'm sure he was shaking his head. Like,
he just delivered write-ups to everybody. That one guy, he like falls on the floor. He's like, launch a ship. He's like, launch a fucking ship. Like, he's just like, get me out of here, man.
That explains why in the next movie he's like so pissed as soon as he enters, soon as he enters that ship, and
well, ironically, he catches Princess Leia like 5 seconds later, so it wasn't that big a deal, I guess.
Yeah, because Vader can do his fucking job, unlike the other guys who are just like. Vader. So I think Vader believes in the mission of order throughout the galaxy. I mean, he says as much in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Now the Death Star is the way to maintain that order.
He says in Revenge of the Sith.
In Revenge of the Sith, yeah, he says, "I
have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire."
He says something like that, even if it's not verbatim, but that is the whole thing. Like, he believes that he and the Emperor are going to bring peace and order,
okay,
and that the Jedi aren't. But he does drop some dialogue like that somewhere along. I did watch it recently. But yeah, that's the movie. Oh, and by the way, just talking about self-sacrifice, because they say that in this podcast at the end, they say that's the movie. I was listening to Horror Virgin. This is a plug for those of you who made it this far in the podcast. Horror Virgin is a hilarious podcast. It's kind of socially aware like we are, but more just about the plot and the movie and what goes into it itself. And they, one of the hosts hates horror movies, has never watched any, and they always make him watch the movies, and then they all review it together.
That's awesome.
And that same host did block me on Twitter. But I still listen to the podcast, and I still love it. I was saying it wasn't a good idea to vote for Biden, and he was like, well,
fuck you.
And,
fuck.
Yeah, his kid's heart's in the right place. You know what I mean? They're all good people on that podcast. But they reviewed Sunshine this past week.
Hey, a favorite of ours.
So they also reviewed Let the Right One In. Like, they're not just doing mainstream horror. So if you want to check it out, Ty, because I know you love it. But they reviewed Sunshine, and they did talk about how, like, sacrifice. And it's funny you mention it, because that was the first movie that taught me what sacrifice really was. It never occurred to me, and I was 17 years old, but it never occurred to me as a kid that, like, people go into war knowing they're not going to come back, or knowing it's a possibility they don't come back. And that's what Sunshine was all about. And I just wanted to tell you that during Kappa's walk, and he was falling down, they put cameras in the helmet and didn't tell him. And then they had a bunch of people kind of press their weight on him without telling him when he fell. So he's actually trying to get up. So if you go to that scene where he's like struggling to get up and he's like screaming and spittle's coming out of his mouth, it's like, ah!
Oh, shit.
That was real.
Yeah. That's fucking awesome. Best part of the movie, too.
Yeah, I mean... Does it border on actor abuse? I don't know. Talk to Tarantino first and then come for Boyle, all right? Talk to Michael Bay first, then talk to Boyle. Talk to who was Buffy? Who was
Joss Whedon.
Joss Whedon. Talk to Joss Whedon and then tell me about Danny Boyle. But dude, I really enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed being able to talk about all this stuff. If you haven't seen Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, hopefully you see it now.
So let me ask you a question before we end. You told me you weren't a big fan of this film when you first saw it. Did you enjoy it more now?
Oh, 100%, man. Yeah,
good.
Absolutely.
Good.
Because now, I'm someone who has a blaster under my but no, because now much like Jin, I am a little more. And I don't want to say radicalized necessarily, but I am more informed. I have pulled a lot further to the left, and I was able to actually see the struggle of the rebellion in this movie. I was able to see the Empire stifle. Well, in Rebels they stifle free speech. In this movie they cover stuff up. He says that Vader says that Jeddah City was actually a mining accident. Like they make it a point to cover stuff up. They're going through foreign cities, holy cities, and mining natural resources. Like all of this was right on point for me. And rebellions are built on hope, and this is, while it is kind of macabre, it is a hopeful film. And it's a huge theme of the Star Wars universe. And I think if you look at the universe as a whole, it is important to realize that it is a long battle, not just against the Empire, but against the dark side itself. Because, there was the Sith, and then the Separatists, along with the Sith a little bit, and then it was the Empire, and then it was the First Order. Like something is always going to come that is a threat to good people everywhere. And regardless of what form it takes, whether it was a threat that was to your grandparents or to your parents or whatever, like there have been threats to marginalized people in the United States for as long as it was built and has officially existed. And much like Cassian said, this fight is real to you. That's what people felt in 2016 when Trump was elected. Maybe you were a white person, but you were on the LGBTQIA plus spectrum, and you thought everything was great because of Obama. And now all of a sudden Trump gets elected and you're like, oh, my rights may be in danger. Guess what? If that's what it took for you to finally become a little more active, then that's great. And I'm not saying, whatever, fuck it. You guys know I'm an ally. I'm not defending myself to you.
No, but I think what you're saying is like, well, two things. One, don't just believe everything that's peddled to you, right? Just because the government or media tells you one thing, do your research, really look into it, educate yourself, and learn what's really happening around you. And second, you can't just stand by. You can't do nothing, because there's going to come a point where it's going to be personal for you. Why wait for it to get that
where
far?
Where it affects you.
Yeah. Like let's help each other. Let's get ahead of it, and let's be active. And again, we outnumber the 1%. We outnumber the government by quite a bit. And, we don't necessarily have to get guillotines out, but I'm not opposed to it. But if we just stopped accepting the bullshit and we just started demanding better, we could actually get it.
Yeah, I mean, now, think of the pandemic, right? Think of all the people who have been put out of work through no fault of their own, through, from a government that maybe they believed in before. Guess what? This fight is real to you now. Now you know a taste of the oppression that other people have been dealing with for so long. And even if it's not just being fired from a job for something you can't control, maybe it's not even being able to get one. There has been oppression. It didn't start with Trump. It's not going to end with Trump. Please don't be complacent just because there's a Democrat in office right now. Because he's going to be just as bad, if not worse, except it'll be quiet. Biden will be the empire, because you will not know the shit that's going on behind closed doors. When he starts the next war, okay, and says that it's completely justified, quote unquote, a mining accident in Jeddah City, do not be complacent. And there will always be threats. And it's funny how people are just all of a sudden, oh my God, white supremacy is real now? Yes, it has always been. It's not just the KKK. It isn't literally everything we see. It is in you, That being said, oh wait, what are we reviewing next week?
Idiocracy.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And also, for whatever fans we have out there, because you are there, and thank you so much for listening. Whatever fans are out there, if any of you are involved in music production at all, I'm kind of looking for a new theme song for the podcast. So, just keep that in mind. Reach out to us, okay? And here's how you can do it. You can find us on Twitter at PolitiPopPod. Find us on Instagram at PolitiPopPodcast. Email us at PolitiPopcast@gmail.com. You can find our show notes and sources at PolitiPopPodcast.wordpress.com, because we don't just make all of this shit up. Some of it, but not all of it. And special thanks to all of you listeners, and to Antonia Chava for logo design. For the Politipop Podcast, I have been Darth Mike Booch.
And I have been Just Ty.
Fighter. No matter what you're watching, no matter what you're reading, listening to, no matter what, hey, even video games you're playing, never stop thinking, never stop learning, and always remember to read between the lines.
And scene.
You always keep me on edge, baby.